2.2 million people are searching for churches online every month, but the likelihood is that they're never going to find your church because your church hasn't worked on its search engine optimization, its SEO. My name is Chris Jackson, and a lot of people call me the SEO Priest, and I've helped hundreds of churches with their search engine optimization, their SEO. This is your ultimate guide to SEO for churches. We're gonna run the full gamut of what SEO is, why it's important, how you do it. Make sure you stick around to the very end of the video because I'm gonna be talking about social media SEO, which literally nobody else is talking about for churches. So you'll wanna stick around for that. So first of all, let's talk about what search engine optimization is. Search engine optimization is the science of making sure that what you want to surface for searches on the internet surfaces. So whether that's your website or that's your Google business profile and the map results, or if this is your social media posts, making sure that if people are searching, that they're finding it. Now, why is search engine optimization important for your church? It's important for a lot of reasons. So the most important reason is because people are looking for churches, right? People know that they need God in their lives. They know they need God's grace, mercy, forgiveness. They know they need guidance in the Christian life, and they know that they can find that at church. So people go searching for churches, and search engine optimization is how you show up for them. And just think about all the reasons why people might be searching for a church. Maybe they are 72 years old and all of a sudden their life is flashing before their eyes and they're thinking about, am I going to go to heaven or not? Or what comes after I die? And so they know that they can get those answers at church, and so they go searching for churches. Or maybe there's somebody, they're having marital problems and they don't know how to fix it themselves. It seems like it's impossible for them to fix their marriage by themselves. And they need some other kind of force or power in their life to help them. And so they go to the place that they know affirms marriage. And so they go looking for churches. Or maybe it's a young man. We live in a time in which a lot of young men are really put down by the wider society. And we've seen this in a lot of churches where young men are just showing up out of nowhere because they know that the church affirms young men in ways that a lot of other institutions don't. And so they go looking for a church. There's so many reasons why people might go looking for churches. And maybe they're not even looking for churches, but they're looking for answers. So they might want to know, what does the Bible say about this or that topic? And the content that you post online, that your church posts online, whether it's in social or if it's on blog posts on your website, search engine optimization is how you make sure the answers that you know to be true, that you know to be right, get up to the top of the results, whether people are searching in YouTube or searching in any other platform or on Google or whatever it is. Search engine optimization is how those answers get to where the eyes that really need to see them. Search engine optimization is also important because at this point in time, it's a fundamental technology. Now, what do I mean by a fundamental technology? So there are some technologies that we just don't even think about anymore because they are part and parcel to everything else. An address for your church building, that's technology. And if you don't have an address for your church building or a mailing address where you can get mail, people aren't going to be able to find you, and the emergency services won't be able to get there to help anybody who's having a medical emergency. The mail that you need, like the bills you need to pay, and the people who want to give you money, that happens too sometimes for churches. That's not going to happen because you're not going to be getting your mail. A phone number too, that's like fundamental technology at this point. We're not getting away from phone numbers anytime soon. A lot of people ignore search engine optimization at this point because it's old. Right, it's 15, 20 years old at this point, and they think they've gone past this and they're more excited about social media or AI, which we'll get to that here in a second. But SEO is fundamental to everything else online. So let's take AI, for example. A lot of people are excited about AI. They want their church to show up in AI. How does AI know about your church? AI is only going to know about your church unless you've got good content online, and if it can find it via external validation. And that's what SEO boils down to always. It's content and external validation. And so how are the AI bots going to know to recommend you or to recommend your answers unless you've done search engine optimization? Because basically AI, it's a big search engine. And even if people are looking for churches online through AI, like they go to ChatGPT and they say, hey, ChatGPT, find me a good church with a Sunday school program and a youth group and a quilting group. Guess what ChatGPT is going to do? It's going to go searching the internet for that perfect church for you to recommend it to you. So that may never hit your website per se. Like that user may not actually go out to your website, and they may not go out to your social profiles. They may not look at you on Google Maps, but AI used all that stuff to recommend your church to that individual. So you can't get around it. It's fundamental. And even in social media, lots of people are really excited about social media these days. They want to post shorts and things like this. And good, go for it. I think that's a great idea. But once again, social media, it really depends on SEO. So let's say someone encountered your church on their Instagram feed. They came and they found a sermon blurb. For whatever reason, your sermon short showed up on their feed when they're normally looking at their fitness influencers or whoever it is they like to look at on Instagram. And it didn't register with them at first. They just swipe by and they keep swiping. But then maybe in a few days, they think to themselves, I heard about that church. Maybe it's St. John's or whatever church it is, right? And maybe they caught the name, but they're not exactly sure how to connect with you. What are they going to do? They're probably going to go out to Google, or maybe they're going to go back into Instagram and they're going to search for your church. Or maybe it's the idea that you're putting in that sermon blurb, right? So they heard an idea about how to improve your marriage in a sermon from a church in their location. So, they might go to Instagram and they might look up, okay, how to improve your marriage church in Boca Raton, Florida, or wherever it is. And unless you've done the search engine optimization on that post, they're not going to connect with you. So search engine optimization, it's absolutely fundamental. At this point, it's like a phone number. It's like an address, but most churches are completely neglecting it. So now let's get to the question, how do you do search engine optimization? And search engine optimization, when you boil it down, it's pretty simple. It boils down to content and external validation. Now, the forms of that content and the forms of that external validation, that's going to be different on every platform, but it always boils down to that. Content and external validation. So your Google business profile, that's how you show up in the map results in Google. It's content and external validation. So making sure that you've got all the fields filled in Google, that you've got those all completely described very accurately with hard facts about your church, that you're using location markers. We're going to get to that in a little bit on the chapter here about local SEO. So making sure that you've got local markers in your name, your description, all that good stuff. So that's the content to make sure that you're going to show up well. And then it's external validation. So for your Google business profile, the external validation is citations and reviews. We'll talk about that again a little bit later in this video. For your website, the content is having well-formatted text on the page, whether that's the text that's visible to the eye, like the visible text, or the text that only bots can see, like your meta tags. But making sure you've got all that content and it's formatted exactly right, and that you're describing your church in keyword-rich terms. Once again, mentioning that you're a church, what kind of church you are, where your location is. All that stuff is going to help your search engine optimization. So that's the content. And then the external validation, it really comes down to backlinks. So another form of this is like social media. So let's say your church is posting shorts on Instagram, for example. Making sure that you're including the name of your church, that you're including in the text, that you're including your location in the text, that you're mentioning the topic that you're talking about, like topics that people might go searching for in the text. All of that is helping you show up. And then the external validation are going to be like the likes and stuff like that on whatever social platform that you're using. Now, at this point, I've noticed that a lot of the social media centric church media people start to get really uncomfortable with this. Because there's a lot of people out there saying, let your pictures or your images or your videos do the talking. Don't be so heavy on text. And I understand what they're talking about with that, but search engines and AI, for them to interpret a video or to interpret an image, that's pretty expensive for them to do. And a lot of times they just don't do it. So you have to have text to back up whatever that image is talking about, whatever that image is trying to convey. You have to have it, whether that's on your website, on your Google business profile, in your social posts. You have to have text. It's got to be there. Otherwise, nobody's going to be able to find it, and it really doesn't matter at that point. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of SEO and how to do SEO for those different kinds of SEO. But before we do, I have a checklist that is going to help you with some of your fundamental SEO for your church. So your Google business profile and your website, you got to have good SEO for those. So if you go to churchseo.io/checklist, that's churchseo.io/checklist, you can download an over 50-point checklist to make sure that your Google business profile and to make sure that your website has good SEO so that they're showing up when people are searching for churches in your area. So now let's go on and talk about the different kinds of SEO. So the first, let's just talk about like national SEO. So what I mean by national or even international SEO, this is talking about topics and subjects that people might have no matter where they are. This is probably not going to be a great growth lever for your church, but it's still going to bless people. So if you are posting sermons online, you may as well help people find them, right? If you're posting shorts on YouTube, it may as well help people find them if they go searching for that topic on YouTube, right? So for national SEO, a lot of times you're taking up questions like, what does the Bible say about that? Or what do Lutherans say about this? Or what do Baptists say about that? Or what do Catholics believe about this? And so national or international SEO, you are trying to show up for those kinds of topics, right? And you can talk about those topics on all kinds of different platforms. You can talk about them on your church website, like in your sermon archive or in your blog. You can talk about them on YouTube. You can talk about them on Instagram in shorts. So you want to make sure that whatever that topic is that people are asking questions about and are searching about, that's in the name of whatever it is that you're posting. So if it's on your blog, on your church website, make sure that topic is in the title there. Then as well, you want to make sure that in the body of whatever it is, maybe that's the description in YouTube, or maybe that's in the body text of or blog post on your church, that you bring up that topic again. If you're posting it on your blog, making sure that it's actually incorporated in some of the headers on that page as well, that's going to help. So making sure all that content is there, and then as well making sure that you've got good external validation. If you are posting things on YouTube or Instagram, make sure your church knows about that so that people can go and they can give it thumbs ups and likes and stars and hearts or whatever it is on that platform. If you're posting things on your website, external validation comes in the forms of backlinks. A lot of times this informational content will start to accumulate backlinks themselves. And so that is going to actually help the rest of your website as it gains authority through those backlinks that it earns. But you can and should be active in getting those backlinks, making sure that other websites are linking to that content. So, if there's a sister church in the county next over and they're also posting sermons on their website, maybe they can link from one of their sermons to whatever sermon that is of yours. That's going to help to boost it. So that's national, international SEO. Let's talk about local SEO. And local SEO is really where the money's at for churches. I say that jokingly, but it's also literal because without people, we don't have money and we can't do our ministries. But so local SEO, however, is really going to be the growth lever for your church. Local SEO is basically making sure that whatever you're posting online is showing up to people in your area. So let's talk about your Google Business Profile. That's probably the most important form of local SEO that there is, so that when somebody goes out to Google and says, show me churches near me, your Google Business Profile is how you show up well in the map results there. And that's the most crucial and important part. So making sure that you've got the right information in that you're going to be showing up for those searches. Another form of local SEO is on your website. So making sure that your homepage is optimized for what I like to call your top level community. So let's say that you're a church in Maplewood, Missouri. Maplewood's an inner ring suburb of St. Louis. I'm probably going to optimize my homepage more for St. Louis in the hopes that I can show up for people looking for churches in St. Louis near me. And so for that, there's all kinds of things that you're going to do. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Your social posts, that's another form of local SEO. So if you talk about your location in the clip itself that you're posting online, if you have your location in the name of whatever post that is, and in the description of whatever that is, guess what? Those algorithms are more likely to surface you to their users in that location. So that's another form of local SEO. And it also helps in terms of the searches that people are doing on those platforms. Especially a lot of young women, they actually don't go to Google as readily as they do some of these social platforms. A lot of young women, if they're looking for a coffee shop or flower shop or whatever it is in a particular town, they're going to go to Instagram first, and they're going to go to TikTok first, and they're going to start searching for those kinds of businesses in that location. And I can guarantee you that there are lots of young women that are doing that on those social platforms for churches as well. So making sure that you've got local descriptions in the text on your social posts, that's going to go a long way. All right, let's talk about some of the various platforms that you can do SEO on for your church. The first and most important is one that a lot of people overlook, and that's your Google Business Profile. So I've already said it in this video, but your Google Business Profile is how you show up well in the map results. Like when somebody goes onto Google and they say, show churches near me, your Google Business Profile is how you show up there. Then as well, Google Business Profiles are used a lot by AI. The AI companies are crawling these heavily to gain information because it's well structured. It's way easier to get information out of a Google business profile than it is from your website, because they don't know what they're finding on a website, right? Every website's different. They're all structured differently. They've all got different HTML. So it's actually harder and more expensive for them to crawl your website than it is to crawl your Google business profile. So your Google business profile, at this point, it's like having a phone number, it's like having an address, and you need to have it set up well. So the content for your Google business profile, you need to make sure that your name is accurate, and then as well that you have your location name, your main location, in the name of your Google business profile. So let's say that you are a church in St. Louis, Missouri, right, or even in the St. Louis region. Let's say you are Grace Baptist Church. You want to have Grace Baptist Church of St. Louis, or in St. Louis, or dash St. Louis. And at this point, this is where a lot of churches fall off the rails, because they're like, there's another Grace Baptist Church in St. Louis, so how are we going to differentiate our Grace Baptist Church from their Grace Baptist Church? And so they're going to put in there, oh, we're Grace Baptist Church in Maplewood, or we're Grace Baptist Church in Richmond Heights. Big mistake, because there are way more people that look for like Baptist churches in St. Louis than Baptist churches in Richmond Heights or Baptist churches in Maplewood. So you want to select that top level locale that you're targeting really thoughtfully in most circumstances. Unless you're in a big metropolis like New York City or Los Angeles, maybe even Houston or Chicago, you want to be targeting basically the largest geographic region possible, the largest thing that people are actually searching for. So if you're in a suburb of St. Louis, put St. Louis there. All right, for example. If you're in New York City, maybe you're going to want to target your borough, or maybe if it's pretty competitive, you might even want to target your neighborhood within your borough. But otherwise, go as big as your region allows, as whatever metropolitan area that you're a part of. You want to make sure that you mention that in your description as well, that you're in that area. And then just generally fill in all the fields. Make sure there's nothing left empty there, so that Google and all the other bots understand exactly who you are. That's going to help them to recommend you to the right people. So that's the content for your Google business profile. Then there's the external validation. So the two main forms of external validation are citations and reviews. So citations are references to your name and your address and your phone number broadly across the internet. A great way to do this is with directories. I usually like to aim for about 50 directories that I'm posting a church's information. And you want to make sure that your name, your address, and your phone number matches 100% what's on your Google business profile, because that gives Google confidence that if they give people directions to your church, there's an actual church there. That if they send a phone call to your church, there's an actual working phone number there. So you got to make sure that stuff is 100% accurate. Even a discrepancy in one place can cause big problems. So then you also need reviews. Reviews are another form of external validation. And a great place to start with reviews is start asking your friends and your family members to review your church, these people that love you, so that they can leave a good review there. And you're going to find that it's actually hard to ask your friends and family for a review. That's good practice, because guess what? It's way harder to ask even other people. So literally every chance you get, you need to be asking reviews. At special events, it needs to be in your bulletin every Sunday. If you use slides, you should have a slide for that during your announcement time. You need to be asking reviews as often as possible, because the vast majority of people that you ask for a review aren't going to do it. But you need reviews to help Google understand that you're a legitimate church, so that they'll recommend you more broadly. So that's your Google business profile. Your next most important form of SEO is your website. So the most important page on your website is your home page. Now, ideally, your homepage is optimized for the biggest area that you serve. So remember, if you're in Maplewood, Missouri, you don't want to optimize for Maplewood in all likelihood. Instead, you should optimize for St. Louis. And the same goes for almost every other area. And so the content for this is, one is your URL. So if you have the opportunity to change a domain name, this is the time to do it. And you want to make sure that the word church is in your domain name, and you want to also make sure that whatever location you're trying to target is in your domain name. If you're in the St. Louis region, making sure you've got the word St. Louis and you've got the word church in your domain name. Personally, I really like .church domains for that. They're a little bit more expensive, but ultimately they're cheap for the sake of doing this. And it just builds the word church in there without a lot of extra characters and fuss. The next most important optimization is in your meta title. So your meta title is not something that you see on the page, but it's a meta tag that Google and other bots can see. Google uses your meta title in order to put the title in its search results. It usually draws from that. This is a place that most churches really mess this up. So a lot of times you'll see maybe the name of the church in the meta title and maybe the name of the page. So if it's St. John's Lutheran Church, they'll say St. John's Lutheran Church Home. Guess what? You failed to tell Google and the other bots where you're located. So you need to make sure that your location, that main location that you're targeting on your homepage, is there in the meta title. Then as well, your meta description. So the meta description is what Google can often use. It doesn't always use it, but it can often use to put in the description of its results. Same principle there. You want to make sure that your meta description has the word church and also has your location in there. And ideally, your meta description is also written in such a way to impel a click. Maybe at the end of the meta description, put learn more because people are like, well, what am I supposed to learn more about? And so then they click into the result, and that's called click-through rate optimization, and that can actually help boost you because Google wants results that people are going to click into. So that can help boost you as well. Then comes the on-page content, and once again, this is a place where a lot of people will tell you, let the images do the talking. Guess what? Images don't talk to the bots, and you need to talk to the bots before you can even talk to people. So you have to have text on the page. And for the homepage, I usually like to aim for at least 600 words of text on the page, sometimes even more. 1,000 words is great because you're giving more surface area for the bots to learn about your church. And then as well, that helps them to recommend you to people. And actually, I think people like text a lot more than we think they do. I'm shocked how much attention people will pay to the text on the page. So you need a lot of text, and it needs to be formatted well. So a big mistake that people have is with headers. So headers, these sort of bridge the gap between text on the page and meta text that is only visible by the bots, because these are tags that you apply to the various headings on your page that are visible. But the tags help the bots understand the structure of the page. A huge mistake that I see, and this is something that you see especially with really expensive websites that are done by a $10,000 website web design firm. These kinds of firms are the absolute worst on this sort of thing. They'll put every header to be what's called an H1 header. So that's the HTML tag saying this is an H1. So guess what? Your H1 header is like the title of the page. It's telling Google all the visible content on the page. That's what this is all about. So if you have 5, 6 different H1 headers on the page, Google doesn't understand, the bots don't understand what the main topic of the page is. So your H1 header, you should have only one. And once again, you need the word church. And then as well, you need the location that you're trying to target in there. Under that, you're going to have other H2 headers. So think of those as like the main points on an outline. And underneath the H2s, you might have H3s, and underneath the H3s, you might have H4s. Just think of it like an outline. And having H2s and even some H3s that are talking about the fact that you are a church in a particular location, that's going to work wonders for you. So making sure if you're a Baptist church, talking about the fact that you're a Baptist church in whatever location that is and what that means to be a Baptist church, or if you're a Lutheran church, same thing, or a Catholic church, the same thing. That's all going to help Google to understand you and reference you. Then as well, you're going to need some paragraph text underneath those headers to just further explain what these things mean. A lot of people don't know what it means to be a Lutheran church, Catholic church, Baptist church, Anglican church. Whatever it is that you're talking about, describe it in there. And then here's a key that a lot of churches miss. Make sure that you include plural forms of the term church, because most churches are searched for in plural terms, so people don't look up church in St. Louis, Missouri, they look up churches in St. Louis, Missouri. And so having those plural forms in your paragraph text can help an awful lot to help you show up in Google. So that's a lot of the content that you need. And as we talked about earlier, content and external validation is what makes a good SEO campaign. So what is the external validation that you need for your website? Basically, it's links from other websites to your website. Every website on the internet has authority, and some websites have the top level of authority. So the White House, New York Times, Forbes, these are what are called seed sites, and basically they act as the foundation of all the rest of the authority on the internet. And so from those seed sites, they link out to other sites, those sites link out to other sites, and they distribute that authority across the internet. So how do you gather authority in to your website? You gather authority in by means of gaining links from other websites. So there's lots of ways to do this. We talked a little bit earlier about using directories to build citations to your church. All of those directories are going to have an opportunity for you to link to your church website. That's going to transfer some authority to your website. Another great place to gain authority for your website is from sister churches. Building links to a sister church that you cooperate well with in the area and say, hey, will you link back to us? That can help build your authority as well. Already talked about putting good content on your website. So maybe you're putting sermon text on your website or theological articles on your website. Those gain links from other websites like crazy, and those can help build your authority. Unlinked mentions. So let's say that you had a program at your church and it got some publicity in the local newspaper, but it never got a link. You can actually call that newspaper up or that news channel up and say, hey, you mentioned our church, but you didn't link to your church. Would you mind adding a link there? And 9 times out of 10, they're glad to do that for you. All right, so we talked about website SEO, and before that, we talked about Google Business Profile SEO, but those aren't the only forms of SEO that your church can utilize. There's also AI SEO, or sometimes it's called AEO, Answer Engine Optimization, or GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Basically, no matter what it's called, and it's still emerging, showing up well in AI. So how does your church do that? One of the most important things for AI SEO is just having your simple, plain website and Google Business Profile SEO dialed in. That's the foundation of everything else. And AI is going to treat your website as the most important place to pull in information about your church. So you have to have that all dialed in. But there are other factors that can help you show up in AI. One of the most important things for showing up in AI is mentions in other forms of media and other venues. So getting mentions in your local press, that's a great way to show up in AI. And so old-fashioned press releases actually are one of the most powerful ways to show up in AI now, because essentially the AI bots, they go and they look at this and they say, look, other people are talking about this church. This church must have a high level of prominence in the community. So whenever you're running a function at your church, a program, whenever you're going to Easter or Christmas time and you're trying to get news out about your service times, old school press releases are one of the most important and powerful things that you can do to help get your church to rank. Then as well, a lot of these use Reddit and other forums to help determine prominence within a community. So if you have someone who's active in Reddit in your church, getting them to post about your church on Reddit can help an awful lot. So if you search like someone looking for churches in your community on Reddit, have someone from your church go and say, hey, I love this church. It's been a huge blessing to me. Maybe they can line up a few friends to upvote that thread of theirs, to upvote that. Maybe they can line up a few friends to upvote that comment of theirs. That's going to help you appear well in AI. Finally, let's talk about social SEO. And so here finally, I'm going to throw a bone to a lot of the audience who might be hating me at this point. I've found that a lot of the people who end up tasked with SEO don't quite like SEO so much. They're more tuned into social. Maybe they're the media manager for the congregation or the communications manager for the congregation, and they are not as thrilled with like wordy websites and wordy posts. But hear me out. This is for you. So social media is a powerful means of utilizing search for your church. And this happens in a few different ways. First of all, Google is pulling in a lot of social content into its search engine results pages. And so social media, if you get that dialed in with the SEO, it can actually benefit the distribution of your social posts. It means that they're not only going to show up in the feed of Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is, but it means that they're also going to show up on Google. And a lot of times they will have more reach on Google than they originally did on the original platform. So that's one reason to make sure that you're paying attention to social media SEO. Another reason is that a lot of people use social media platforms as search engines. I talked about it earlier in the video. A lot of young women like to use Instagram and TikTok as their search engines of choice over and against Google or ChatGPT or whatever it is. So making sure that you've got the SEO dialed in can actually help you with search on the platform as well. And the same rules apply there as it does for everything else. It always comes down to content and it comes down to external validation. So let's talk about content. First of all, with your social posts, a lot of churches post sermon clips, for example, or little thoughts about theology, but they don't have these dialed into questions that people are actually asking about the Bible or about God or about a certain denomination. And so you can take that same content, but if you pay attention to that title and that description and you put that information in there that people are looking for, that can help you to show up. So for example, let's say your pastor has been preaching about conflict at home. People, they might go on to Google or they might go on to TikTok or Instagram and search, how can I get peace at home? Even though the pastor talked about that in that snippet that you're posting, that might not show up for people unless you title it correctly and maybe put that in the description as well. So instead of saying like our pastor's sermon about the home, you could say how to get peace in your home.
And you can put that in the title, you can put that in the description. And now when people search, potentially that short snippet that you posted on your YouTube page, your Instagram page, or whatever it is, that's going to show up for people when they're searching for it. Or it might show up as well in Google search results when people are looking for that. So that's the national and international SEO side of things. Then as well, there's the local SEO side of things. And it's the same principles there. Make sure you have the word church, and that as well that you put your location into those important places in your content. So like in your title, let's say you're talking about peace in the home, you could title it, How to Get Peace in Your Home, Pipe St. John Lutheran Church in Phoenix, Arizona, or something like that. And then put that same information in the description. And that's gonna help your content rise up for people that are looking for content in your area, and maybe even looking for a church in your area as well. So that's all of the content that you need to take care of. But then as well, there's the external validation. And the external validation is pretty simple when it comes to the social algorithms. So likes, upvotes, subscribes on the post, comments on the post, all of that good stuff. So encouraging your viewers to leave those comments, to listen to the end, to subscribe, all that stuff is going to help boost it on the platform. And then as well, you can also build links to those social posts from other websites, from other locations on the internet. And that's going to help it to show up well on Google. In fact, there's a whole realm of getting social posts to get boosted in Google. And so, yeah, those likes, subscribes are going to help. And then also, maybe you're going to embed that on your website, or you're going to ask a fellow church to link to that. That's all going to help your social posts rise up. So there you go. There's your ultimate guide for SEO for churches, and it's the most up-to-date information. If you want a good guide for the foundational SEO for your church, make sure to download my checklist, churchseo.io/checklist. It's over 50 points that's going to help you dial in your Google Business Profile SEO and as well your website SEO.